when a man has a seminal discharge, this is what he's to do. And then down here in 19, it goes to when a woman has a discharge, and hers is usually a discharge of blood. And so this whole chapter deals with what we have seen earlier, things that make you clean and things that make you unclean. And it's very important to remember this in these passages here in Leviticus. Clean and unclean does not correlate to sinful and not sinful. Okay? These are essentially health laws. The nation of Israel had one law code that covered crimes, it covered health, it covered marriage. The laws in ancient Israel were all from the books of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And that was their entire law code. Those were the laws by which people were judged. And these laws here are all about keeping people clean. And a part of that importance is the contagion of diseases and what that can do. So they didn't have the medical facilities, the medical knowledge that we have now. This is medicine 1500 BC. Okay, so that's where we're at when we're in the book of Leviticus. We're around the time of Moses, 1500 BC, and yet they had some of the same issues, health issues that we have. And so I'll briefly go through this, and then we'll move on to the next chapters. And I'm going to have to do that with a couple other chapters too. So when any man, okay, that's the case here, has a discharge, and you can see this whole section is about the discharge. And what is it saying? Well, first of all, he's unclean. Second of all, whoever comes into contact with him or his discharge, they become unclean as well. And so you'll see that in here on the yellow. People, he becomes unclean. If you sit where he sits, you become unclean. If you touch his bed, you're supposed to wash your clothes. If you sit where he sat, if you touch the person, if you touch any of the things which were under him, if you touch without having rinsed your hands. So there's two people addressed here: the person that has the discharge, which renders them unclean, and then anybody that comes into contact with the discharge or where the person was at, or touches him or touches that, they too become unclean. Now the issue here, as in the Levitical laws, when you become unclean, you have to become clean again. And there's ways to do that. Back in previous chapters, one of the ways was by offering an offering or a sacrifice. Here, if you look, we're looking at these orange ones here, all right? Here's what you do if you become unclean. You wash your clothes, you bathe in water, and you're unclean until evening, okay? That's the cleansing process here. You wash your clothes, you yourself bathe, and you remain unclean until the evening. And when the evening comes, now you're clean again. All right? And we see that through here as well. You bathe in water. If the man with the discharge spits on someone that's clean, they become unclean. All right? So that's another point of contact here. But notice it's pretty consistent here. The person that comes into contact with the person also washes his clothes, bathes in water, and you're unclean until evening. If contact is not a person, but a thing, an earthenware vessel, which the person with the discharge touches, shall be broken. and every wooden vessel shall be rinsed in water. So remember, persons can become unclean. As we saw last week, houses can become unclean. Any objects that an unclean person touches or uses, they become unclean. So, uncleanness, there's a sense in which uncleanness is contagious. All right. And again, you have to look at these through the lens of 1500 BC. This is how they protected the community. And in a moment, I'll get to a further, this section here, when he becomes cleansed, we go through this cleansing process here. It's repeated here. For men, they they do this for 7 days. On the 8th day, they take 2 turtle doves, 2 young pigeons. They come to the priest, and the priest offers those 2 for offerings, and then atonement is made, and that man is atoned for on behalf of his discharge. Okay. So in this case, for men, on the 8th day, all right, you present these offerings and they're offered up. And at this point, the priest renders you clean, all right? Specific discharges in 1516 for a man, it's going to follow the same pattern. A woman, her discharge is primarily from menstruation. And remember, blood is very, if it's not used for sacrifice, it's unclean. Blood has been sanctified by the Lord for use in atonement. And so this is women, and I'll leave you guys to look at those on your own, because I don't want to do it. And and thank you. Mhm. Oh, that's a good question, Bud. I don't really know that that's even addressed, but I don't. I that I don't know. That's a good question. You should look that up. You should find an answer to that. I did want to bring, when you get to the end of this chapter here, you get a summary. And what's said in this summary, it adds some important information. Thus you shall keep the sons of Israel separated from their uncleanness, so that they will not die in their uncleanness by their defiling my tabernacle that is among them. All right. This is the law for the one with the discharge, for the man, for the woman, whether male or female. But this part right here, remember, the tabernacle is just now coming into use. And the Lord wants anyone that approaches the tabernacle, which is the Lord's dwelling, has to be clean. And if you're unclean and you defile the tabernacle, you will die. All right. So that makes this not just a health issue, it also makes it a holiness issue. All right. So that's what's important about not just this chapter, but any clean and unclean laws. All right. The Lord has separated as holy certain people and certain things. And those who are of a status that has been set apart are not to be compromised by uncleanness. So that's just a general rule here. All right. Any questions on that? It's a pretty easy chapter to read, and it'll follow the same pattern like we've seen before. Yeah, Bud. Yes. Yes. Hmm. Uh huh. Saved? No. No. And here's why. Here's this is a difficult. Well, it's not that difficult. It's just salvation in the Old Testament was no different than salvation in the New Testament. It was never by works. It was always by faith. All right. That's a general principle. And Paul draws on that many times in the New Testament. Um, the death here that he would speak about, death in none of these Levitical laws is spiritual death. Okay. The Jewish people were chosen by God to belong to him, and they embraced that promise by their faith. And so that's why when you go through the book of Hebrews and that great, hall of fame there, people of faith, that's the point that the author of Hebrews makes. All of these gained approval from God, not by their sacrifices, it was by their faith. And so that's an important thing to remember. Don't try and impose New Testament definitions, let's say, on some of these Old Testament terms. Um, um, it says in Ezekiel, "The soul that sins shall surely die." Well, that's not necessarily referring to spiritual death. That in this case, we're talking physical death. Okay, um, and remember, there's a background to this. In Leviticus 10, Aaron's two sons entered the presence of the Lord, and it says they offered strange fire on the altar, and they were immediately killed. They're dead. And and so anyone here who approaches the tabernacle and defiles it, the warning is the same thing is going to happen to you. All right, you don't intrude into the holiness of the Lord. All right, whether you like how he responds or not, his response will be immediate. Okay, so again, these laws are they're commands, and the Lord expects them to be followed. And if you're going to approach a holy God, you have to know that you're approaching Him in your cleanness. So that's how to look at these when there's a death penalty involved, for instance. Okay. What does that say? 15:1? No, 16:1. Oh, 16:1. Okay. Um, well, I was going to go through these where you can see it, but we've already talked about it. This is Leviticus 16. I'll do the same thing. Um, okay, I'll give you an overview here. Okay. Leviticus 16 is going to introduce us to the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. It is today, yet it is still, this holiday is still celebrated today. If you've ever heard Yom Kippur, that is the Day of Atonement. Okay. And it's introduced by what happened with Aaron's two sons. And so I'll come back to this, but let's go here. The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron. Now, this is back in chapter 10. So, time wise, we haven't really moved further along. When they had approached the presence of the Lord and died. Okay, this sets up this entire chapter right here. You remember what happened? The two sons of Aaron. It's kind of a sad moment because the Lord, the tabernacle is constructed, the priests have been sanctified, and Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's two sons, are going to offer their first sacrifice. And it says they offered strange fire to the Lord. That the Lord, and it says it this way: they offered strange fire to the Lord, which the Lord had not commanded. All right, so that's an important part. In all the goodness of their heart, or however, or whatever their motives were, they brought an offering to the Lord that the Lord didn't command them to bring. And what happened was fire fell from heaven, and it burned them both up, right there in the presence of the Lord. This might give us a clue as to really what was behind that. It says the Lord said to Moses, boy, that is really big print. Tell your brother Aaron that he shall not enter at any time into the holy place inside the veil before the mercy seat which is on the ark, or he will die. Okay, so there's a warning there. Now, how might this maybe give us a clue also to why those two sons died? They entered at the wrong time. Okay, this whole chapter is going to be about when you can do this: enter into the holy place inside the veil before the mercy seat, which is on the ark. Where are we in that description? In the tabernacle. So remember the tabernacle, you had an outer court, you had a holy place. In the holy place is where the sacrifices were brought. That's where the burnt sacrifice of burnt offering was. That's the altar of burnt offering. That's in the holy place. Israelites who were clean could come into the courtyard, but that's separated by a curtain into another room called the holy place. And the holy place, only the sons of Aaron could enter. Only the priests could enter. No one else. And that's where they brought the blood of the sacrifices, and that's where they sprinkled it, and that's where they brought the incense altar. All of that's taking place by all of the priests every day as people bring their sacrifices. But the holy place is separated from a third compartment, which is called the holiest place. And it's described as the Holy of Holies. So you've got the holy place, but then you've got the place that's the holy of the holy place, the holiest place. Inside the holiest place, all right, the Holy of Holies. Inside the veil, there's a veil that separates holy from the holy place, Holy of Holies. Okay. Inside there is the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, you all remember this from Sunday school, I'm sure. The Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant. The word ark is simply a word for box. Noah's Ark was a big box that floated. The Ark of the Covenant was kind of like a chest, and the seat, or the top, or the lid of the box is referred to here as the mercy seat. And if you remember when it was being constructed, the Ark of the Covenant, the reason it's called the Ark of the Covenant is because the covenant that God made with Moses and the people of Israel were inside that box. And overshadowing, carved over the top of the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat were these two cherubs, remember, with their outstretched wings. And the Ark of the Covenant with the mercy seat was the throne of God. That's how it's described in the book of Psalms. It is the throne of God. It is the place where God would come and meet with Moses or the high priest once a year. You could only go in here once a year. and it had to be on the same day. That's what this is Leviticus 16, and only the high priest can be there. All right. The sons of Aaron, they just decided, let's offer an offering, and they go inside the veil, and they're immediately struck dead. Okay. And here's what the Lord says here. If you go inside the veil, he says, "For I will appear in the cloud over the mercy seat." All right. So when Aaron goes in to this inner room, he has to bring incense. And the cloud or the smoke of the incense actually covers the mercy seat here and the Ark of the Covenant. And that cloud covering is a shield that keeps the high priest from dying because of the brilliance of the glory of God. Okay. Remember before in the wilderness, they're led from place to place by the Lord. And how does the Lord appear? He's in a cloud. Okay. And at night, it's a cloud. I'm sorry, at night, in the morning, in the day, it's a cloud. At night, it's the same cloud, but it appears to be a pillar of fire because the glory of the Lord is shining through that cloud. Leviticus begins where Exodus ends. Okay, is that profound? Uh, Exodus ends with this: the cloud filled the tabernacle, and the glory of the Lord was in the cloud, and it was so bright Moses could not go in there. Okay, so the reason you can't go at any time into the holy place is because it is the holiest place. The holiest place on the place of the earth was the Holy of Holies. All right. That is the place where God said, and we'll see it in other passages, where God said to Moses, you come and stand before me, I'll meet you there. Okay. So again, just to make sure, you can't do it at any time. And if you're going to approach the Holy of Holies, and these instructions are only for the high priest, because he's the only one that can do that, then you have to come with a sacrifice, a bull for a sin offering, a ram for a burnt offering. You have to put on the holy garments that were made for the high priest. Put on the holy linen, gird with the linen sash, and you have to bathe your body in water and then put them on. All right. So, in order for the priest to come before the Lord, the high priest, on this day, he has to come with offerings. He has to bathe himself and be clean, and he has to be wearing the garments that were sanctified or set apart for the high priest. All right. Yeah, Sharon?
What did the Jews do today for their Day of Atonement? There's no temple. So how do they really practice their religion?
So when I was going to college, I was going to Portland State, and I was a junior. And in order to graduate back then, you had to have 2 years of a foreign language. So when I was a junior, I had to choose a foreign language to graduate, and I'd had 3 years of French in high school, so I'll take French, where all the French classes were full. In fact, all of the language classes were full except for Serbo-Croatian and and modern Hebrew. So I took modern Hebrew, but I took it from a woman, a Jewish gal from Israel who was over here trying to learn English. And she said, Jewish people today, in place of sacrifice, do good works. So today in Judaism, the doing of good works is their substitute for sacrifices. So they can't really they can't really fulfill what was actually commanded them, but they've made a substitute. Yeah, Lori? That's right. That's a good point. Yeah, the fire of God would have consumed that sacrifice if it was the right one, because that's how it gets burned up. But yeah, they were decided to we've got a good idea. Let's go with it. Yeah, Sharon?
Put that on the shelf because of the time we can start
Yes. Well, let's remember when Jesus came. He says there's someone here now that's greater than the law, and there's someone here now that's greater than the temple. Okay, so all of these Levitical things that we're looking at are when you look at this and you read through Leviticus, you have to have your mind looking ahead, primarily to the book of Hebrews, okay? Because these are all pictures, Old Testament pictures of what are going to be fulfilled in the New Testament. So here there's a tabernacle on earth, but there's a real tabernacle in heaven. And here the priests bring the blood of bulls and goats on earth, but the real blood, which is the blood of Christ that cleanses from all sin, it's presented in heaven. So again, and even the clean and unclean issues, okay? It says in Hebrews, even the heavenly tabernacle had to be cleansed with blood, okay? So, but again, today, Jewish people, there's no temple, so they can't offer their sacrifices. There's no priesthood because they don't know what tribe they belong to. It's really an unworkable system for them, and yet it's still in their law. So okay, so Aaron, he has to bring an offering when he comes, and notice this: for himself, for his household. So he brings a bull and he makes that sacrifice, and that's to cleanse him and his household, okay, which is the other priests, before he can enter into the presence of the Lord. He has to be cleansed with blood, not just bathed with water, okay? Then he said, you're also supposed to take two goats, present them before the Lord. And between these two goats, you're going to cast lots. And one of them you're going to sacrifice before the Lord. And the other one you're going to set free into the wilderness. All right, that's called the scapegoat. Okay, so we'll just work our way through here real quickly. Aaron should take the goat, which is for the Lord, and he's going to offer it as a sin offering. The other goat shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement upon it, to send it into the wilderness as a scapegoat. Now, there's a picture behind this. What is the picture that we get from what's called the scapegoat here? And yeah, that's right. This is atonement here. Okay. The sacrifice here, the sin offering is presented, okay, with the one goat, and the other goat, it's sent into the wilderness. But here we'll see more. Placed on the goat that's sent into the wilderness is our sins, and they're sent away into the wilderness, okay, like as far as the east is from the west, or it's that separation. It's removed from the people. It's removed from the people of Israel. It's removed from the community. It's sent out into the wilderness. All right, that's called the scapegoat. So when the high priest enters the holy of holies, he has to have a sin offering for himself. He has to have a sin offering for his household. It repeats here for himself, and then he's supposed to also bring sweet incense inside the veil. Remember when we talk about the tabernacle, all right? It's all about location. Inside the veil, this is where the Lord meets with his people, okay? So he's going to put incense on the fire before the Lord. And why? So that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat that is on the ark of testimony. Otherwise, he will die. It's the third time in this chapter it says he will die. All right. This is serious stuff. What's the purpose of the incense? It covers the mercy seat. It's a cloud of incense, and it covers the mercy seat. One of the reasons the New Testament or the Old Testament said, no man can see God and live is because of his glory. Okay. And something similar to that, when Paul sees Jesus on the road to Damascus, what does he actually see? A bright light that was blinding. That was Jesus in his glory. Okay. So when you study the word glory, especially in the Old Testament, it's always something that shines. It's always shining. Glory shines. All right, and it's that brilliant light that is blindingly white and as pure as snow. Okay, so it's got the concept of purity in it as well. So, like a lot of passages we saw, when Aaron brings this sacrifice and they slay it, he takes the blood. And remember, you always want to look at what do they do with the blood in these sacrifices. He sprinkles it on the mercy seat. He sprinkles it in front of the mercy seat. And he sprinkles some of the blood with his fingers 7 times. Okay. And see, what that is signifying is that because Aaron has entered the presence of the Lord, his, even though he's clean, his sinfulness will contaminate everything. So it all has to be cleansed. And that's what's happening here. He takes that blood, which is for himself, that's for his cleansing, and then he takes it and he cleanses all of these holy parts of the tabernacle. Okay. Again, this whole idea of being pure and cleansing when you come into the presence of the Lord, you cannot escape the emphasis on that. 1 John 1:7.
If we're living in the light as God is in the light, then we have fellowship with each other.
Cleanses us from all sins. That's it. Okay. So again, when you look at these, look ahead and see where does Jesus relate here. All right. Okay. Then he slaughters the goat for the sin offering, and that's for the people. He brings the blood inside the veil. He does the same thing. He shall make atonement for the holy place because of the impurities of the sons of Israel and because of their transgressions, regard for all their sins. So, for the tent of meeting, that's the overall tabernacle, that has to be cleansed. The holy place, and no one can be in the holy place until Aaron comes out, okay? And he's going to make atonement for himself, for his household, and for all the assembly of Israel. Okay, this is on one day, all right? Just one meeting, one time a year. All of this is to happening. And then he makes atonement for the altar. And he puts the blood on the horns of the altar. And then he sprinkles the blood 7 times and he cleanses it from the impurities of the sons of Israel. He consecrates it. Okay. So, as good as you think you are, when you come into the presence of a holy God, he will expose you for what you really are. You need to be cleansed. Okay. When he finishes atoning for the holy place and the tent of meeting and the altar, he sets the live goat, he offers the live goat, and he takes the goat, lays his hands on the head of the live goat, and confesses over it all the iniquities of the sons of Israel and all their transgressions in regard to all their sins. He shall lay them on the head of the goat and send it away into the wilderness by a man who stands in readiness. And the goat shall bear on itself all their iniquities to a solitary land, and he shall release the goat into the wilderness. That's the scapegoat. Okay. Your translation might have something different than scapegoat. They're not really. It's a word that's Azael or something like that, and it's got some different ideas as to what it might refer to. But the general idea is here. Okay. When Aaron's done, he takes off his garments, he bathes his body, he puts back on his regular clothes, and then he offers burnt offerings. Okay. Of the people to make atonement for himself and for the people. So sin offerings first, and when he's done, burnt offerings. Those 2 offerings here. Okay, and then let's get to the bottom here. This shall be a permanent statute for you in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month. You shall humble your souls and not do any work, whether native or the alien who sojourns among you, for it is on this day that atonement shall be made from you or for you to cleanse you. And now notice here, you will be clean from all your sins before the Lord. It is a Sabbath, solemn rest that you may humble your souls. It is a permanent statute, okay? And then it just summarized what the chapter just read about the priest making atonement for all the different parts as well as for the people. And it repeats it again. It is a permanent statute to make atonement for the sons of Israel and all their sins once every year. And just as the Lord commanded, so he did. Now, if you notice here, and I'll try and highlight this for you in verse 21, and well, I'll just all their sins. It's in verse 21. I think it's verse 30 and 34 for all their sins. What's happening on the Day of Atonement? On this one day, the high priest comes before the Lord with the blood of those sacrifices, and he cleanses everything, including the people. And they are cleansed of all of the sins that they have committed the previous year that they have not brought sacrifices for. They are completely clean on this one day. And next year, they'll do it all over again. Okay? So these 3 words, all their sins, all right? That's the key to the Day of Atonement. That's what makes this day different than any other day in which they're sacrificing for sins. And if I could show you, here we come to the book of Hebrews, and when you're reading Hebrews, now you'll remember, oh yeah, this is what they're talking about. Referring to Jesus, who does not need daily, like those high priests, to offer up sacrifices, first for his own sins and then for the sins of the people, because this he did once for all when he offered up himself. And in Hebrews 9, it's talking about into the second veil. But into the second, only the high priest enters once a year, not without taking blood, which he offers for himself and for the sins of the people, notice, committed in ignorance. So these sins in particular are for sins that you committed. You may not even be aware of it, but they're still sins. And the Day of Atonement cleanses you from those sins. Okay? Um, for the law, since it is only a shadow of the good things to come and not the very form of things, can never, by the same sacrifices which they offer continually year by year, make perfect those who draw near. But in those sacrifices, there is a reminder of sins year by year. Every year, you are brought back to remember that you are still a sinful people. Yeah, Chris?
All the different types of sacrifices, the personal sacrifices,
Mm-hmm.
everybody, but it was a sacrifice made to cover the what's
Yes.
happening here.
The sin offering that's in, I think it's in Leviticus 4, that particular kind of offering was for sins either that you committed in ignorance, in other words, you didn't know they were sins, or they were sins that you didn't do intentionally. So it goes back to intention there. Either way, they're still sins.
But then the Day of Atonement, he's making sacrifices for sins committed unintentionally.
Yeah.
What's different
Well,
between
there's got to be overlap there because there. But remember, um, I don't want to bring the. Remember those Leviticus 4 sacrifices. Okay, you sacrifice it, and then before the Day of Atonement, or when the Day of Atonement comes, you've got some that you haven't sacrificed for. Okay, so it makes sure that on this one day there's a completely clean slate. All right, but um, it doesn't stay clean for very long, and next year it just starts over again. Okay, and now notice again the when we talk about what Jesus did, his sacrifice once for all, not yearly, once for all. And why once for all? Because that one sacrifice did take away sin, where these sacrifices just postponed it for another year. Okay. So again, well, that's 2 chapters we got through. Uh, chapter 17, I'll make this real quick. It's a short chapter. It basically says from now on, all sacrifices have to be brought to the tabernacle. Before the tabernacle was built, they offered sacrifices and they built altars in other places. Chapter 17 is essentially says now everything has to be brought to the doorway of the tent of meeting to the priest. They shall no longer sacrifice their sacrifices to goat demons in which they played the harlot. This is to be a permanent statute. So Israel wasn't a real faithful people, even in the early days. But now the tabernacle's built, therefore all offerings have to be brought there. Okay, nowhere else. And a further thing about you're not supposed to eat any blood. All right, nope. Eat any blood. No person among you may eat blood. If you catch if you're hunting and you catch a beast and that you're going to eat, you're supposed to pour the blood out onto the ground and cover it up. Okay. All right. So that's Leviticus 17.
Good job.
17. Yeah. Yeah. Don't expect that every time. Leviticus 18. It's actually a part of 18 and 20 kind of together. But I'll get started on 18. Here's the introduction here. The Lord spoke to Moses, I'm the Lord your God. You shall not do what is done in the land of Egypt where you lived, nor are you to do what is done in the land of Canaan where I am taking you. All right? Don't do what they were doing in the land of Egypt that you came from. Don't do what they're doing in the land of Canaan where I'm sending you. All right? Well, now, what is it you don't want us to do? There's certain things they did I don't want you to do. Okay? Um, this phrase will continue throughout this chapter. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. The first section of the chapter deals with incest. None of you shall approach any blood relative to uncover his nakedness. I am the Lord. All right. And you see it throughout here nakedness, nakedness, naked. And in this section here, it's all about you are not to have sexual relationships with a relative, I guess. I'll just summarize it that way. And it goes through all the different relatives. Can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. Okay. Don't do that. What this means is this is what the nations were doing. This is what the Canaanites were doing. This is what the Egyptians were doing. So Leviticus 18 is all about sexual sins, and especially those that were done from the places that you came from and to the places where you're going. In other words, you were surrounded by people that did this, and you're going to a place where the nations there of Canaan, they do this. Do not do this. All right. It talks about other sexual sins. There's other laws thrown in here. You shall not give any of your offspring to offer them to Moloch, and you shall not profane the name of your God. Moloch was, I believe, a god of the Ammonites, and they offered child sacrifice to that god. So he said, don't do that. All right. And here in 22, you shall not lie with a male as one lies with a female. It is an abomination. Okay. And then there's other sins here. It's kind of an R-rated chapter there. So I'll just start in verse 24. Do not defile yourself by any of these things, for by all of these things the nations which I am casting you out before you have become defiled. These sins mentioned here, they not only defile you, but this section here is going to tell us they also defile the land on which you're going to live. The land that God has separated from all the lands of the earth to make it the place of his dwelling, you defile the land itself with those sins. Okay, see what it says here? For by all these, the nations which I am casting out before you have become defiled, for the land has become defiled. Therefore, I brought its punishment upon it. So the land has spewed out its inhabitants. And so we have here at the end of this chapter, even the land on which they live is to be cleansed. Okay. And when you sin, you defile the land, which is then become defiled. And it says if you do that, the land is going to spew you out. Okay. My charge, do not practice any of the abominable customs which have been practiced before you, so as not to defile yourselves with them. I am the Lord your God. Okay. And this is not just a statement, this is a warning. Okay. I am the Lord your God. Okay. So I'll leave you to read that chapter on your own. It's pretty clear. But again, um, you see from all of these chapters, anything that God has set apart for himself is to be kept clean. Okay. And when you sin, you defile it. Okay. So, any questions on that?